All right, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Sports to Suits Live. I am your host, Amanda Banks, and I am so excited to jump into today's conversation. Please drop us a note. Let us know where you're tuning in from so we can give some shout outs. As you're joining, feel free to drop some comments. We love for these conversations to be interactive. And today's guest, I am so excited to jump into conversation today because we haven't really spent a lot of time getting to know each other. So, Andre, thank you so much for joining in on the show today.
Well, it's my pleasure having me. I thought you were really good. The intro is awesome. I gotta say, the intro is really awesome. So that's exciting. Got me all pumped up like I was playing. So
Yeah, well, that intro, super shout out to Scott Schutte. So Scott is the one that made that, and it plays so nicely into what we're doing. And that's the goal, is to get hype, to spread a little love and joy to other people through good quality conversations. I'm hoping that we can pick your brain a little bit today to learn a little bit more about your journey and some of the things that you have done in your career, as well as how it translates from sports to business. So we've got some people tuning in here. We've got Jason tuning in from Tulsa. And once again, Jason always submits the best questions. So no pressure, Jason. I'm expecting a couple of questions coming in from you. And we've got Jody from EPSG. So thanks, Jody. And then we've got Argel tuning in from Irvine, California. So while I make sure that everything is technically sound and working well, Andre, why don't you give the audience a little bit of a background about yourself so that they can get to know you a bit better?
wow. Well, let's start off a little bit about me. I'm from Baltimore, Maryland. Moved here to Arizona. My background, of course, is in sports, baseball primarily. Um, Went to University of Maryland Eastern Shore. Was an All-Star center fielder, All MEAC, 1984-85. Uh, Worked with baseball throughout that whole time as a youngster, all the way through to college and professional, etc. Through my journey, I had an opportunity to become, a pro player, and then also to become a scout for the St. Louis Cardinals. That road was a real blessing to be able to be part of Major League Baseball, um, as well as trying to fight, through the hard grind of being a baseball player, having opportunities to still be a part of Major League Baseball in that capacity to helping people out. But players, really excited about the opportunity to be able to discuss different aspects of the game, transitioning into sports, into suits, as we say, because it's a very important thing that we're going to be talking about, how to transition into that. And I definitely can give you some insight in reference to that from the grassroots level, because everything that I've done, I've pretty much created um, the actually a mindset and the perseverance to be able to get to this level.
Well, we've got tons of stuff popping in here. So let's give another shout out to, hold on, Trevor Anderson's popping in from New Jersey. Good to see you, Trevor. And we are representing sports to suits. I've got the cap on, but you've got the much more stylish version. So you've got sports here and suits over there. So I'm excited to dive into this conversation with you and to learn a little bit more about some of the things that you've got going on. But I want to start, because I love to ask this question to everybody from the beginning. How did you get engaged into sports and baseball specifically? Was it something that you started playing as a really young kid? Was it other people that you had around you that were kind of encouraging you with that? Like, how did you get into sports and have this love and passion for baseball?
Well, sports, I guess I'll tell you a story. It really started from my mother. Uh, well, yeah, I got to give her some credit. It started from my mother. But, my mother wouldn't let me play certain sports because she was afraid that I would get injured. So she allowed me to play baseball, to a certain point. She allowed me to play baseball. And so with that one sport, um, I've kind of turned into some type of, you know, incredible player, I would say, at a younger age, because I actually had the talent, a lot earlier. And then, of course, watching the game itself, baseball wise, was the love of my life, so to speak. And back in the '70s, watching it, in the little parts of the '80s was my time to be able to see some of the greatest players in the game. And um, people fail to realize that baseball was king at one point. Baseball was king, not football, not basketball. Baseball was king. So if you weren't playing baseball, then you were kind of like behind the curve. Football was, I think basketball might have been in front of football at that one point in time, but baseball was king. I played both. I mean, I played all sports, but I focus on baseball primarily again because my mother wouldn't allow me to play other sports, but that's kind of crazy, but it worked out. But I forgot the rest of the part of your question, but
well, what about it did you love? So I'm always curious and fascinated with, where does so there's talent and then there's also discipline and hard work, and you have to kind of marry all of these things together to become a very high level athlete. So at what point, like, did you say, what, I am super passionate about this and I have the talent and drive and discipline to actually make go into the professional leagues?
Well, you have to dive in, at an early age. I mean, I remember being a kid at 7. I think someone asked me what did I want to what would I like to be when I grew up. I mean, most kids say all those things, the sports part, but I really meant it. I said baseball player. So from that point on, that's been my tag. That's been my focus. That's been my drive. That's who I am. That's where I identify myself as growing up. Even when my friends were playing the other sports, baseball was not a glamour sport. It was at one point, but it became not a glamour sport because it's not a glamour sport in college. It's not a glamour sport. Pretty much football. Everybody knows who's the number 1 draft pick in football and basketball. Nobody knows who the number 1 draft pick in baseball. They might know, but after that, it's no one knows. But so with that sport, the drive, being young, understanding the game, the teamwork, the camaraderie, and I think because having a strong background with my mom raising me to be very disciplined. Baseball is a sport that you really have to be disciplined if you're going to master it 100%, because it has a certain skill set that you just cannot ignore. Hand-eye coordination is kind of like golf in some aspects. It's a lot. It's very disciplined. You can play it. You can play the game sloppy, or if you really buckle down and understand everything as far as the professional side of it, it's really kind of tedious.
So what was the difference going from just regular sports, then you're going to go into college and you're going to play, and then transitioning into the professional leagues? There are so many student athletes that listen in on this show. In fact, I have a stepson that plays college baseball right now as a pitcher out in Cal State. So maybe like if you could give a couple of lessons learned or some tips or tidbits from your experience in playing either college or professional that you could give to these young athletes, what kind of words of advice would you give to them?
Well, first and foremost, you have to have a passion for it. You have to understand there will be times where you won't be the best player on the field. You have to understand that. But what I always used to tell myself, which I tell all my guys that I train, the guys that I support, the guys that I represent, you have to have this switch that's inside you where you can literally turn boos into cheers. And you have to have that button to be able to do that pretty much in life in general.
I mean, that applies to
you have to. Well, baseball is life. You have to really be able to turn this button from boos to cheers at any moment and any time, because it's easy to succeed with the cheers. Some of the greatest athletes that go into hostile waters hear boos all the time, and they immediately get that chill that's really cheers. Russell Wilson played last night and he got boos, but he understands that's really cheers and disappointments because of how great you were or what you represent to that organization. But as a player, you have to have that for yourself.
You got to keep all the noise out of there. The only noise that matters is the one that you're telling yourself.
Yeah, because everything, you're going to hear a lot of different things from a lot of different sources, and you have to be able to block it out and be able to focus on what's important. And that's where it becomes difficult because, if you're in college, you got to deal with schoolwork. You got to deal with your grades and everything else that comes with that. And then you'll have disappointments throughout your growth in baseball and college and schools and et cetera. You'll have a lot of disappointments. That's where that switch comes into play. And you really have to really, really, really focus on your craft. And that's easy to say. When I was a kid, they don't have all the tools that they have now. They have, as far as showing who you are and what kind of talent you have YouTube, you have all these things, you have all these incredible resources to be able to showcase your talent. In the early days, of course, you didn't have that. It was more so paper clippings. If you would have to go to the newspaper to see exactly who did what and when and how, and then translate that how you need to in your brain to say, okay, he had a really good game, but never would get a chance to see it.
So how'd you get
But
your name out there, like without all of those resources? Because I'm really curious about that, because there's so much going on with, name, image, and likeness and branding and all of that stuff. And quite frankly, I'm a super fan of things like thank you cards, handwritten notes, like all sorts of just like maybe old school type methodology versus using TikTok or some of these other things. But
well,
how did you go about getting your name out there in that type of circumstance or situation?
for me, I'm really a caveman when it comes to technology. Technology has passed me by. I'm just being honest. So for me, it was about um, just just understanding what my goals were and understanding, like for an example, um, a long time ago there used to be a magazine called Baseball Weekly. All right, Baseball Weekly. I mean, we don't look at the paper at all anymore. So, but Baseball Weekly used to be in. It would be in Walgreens right now, or CVS, or whatever, 7-Eleven, or whatever you have out there, different places. And you would go to the store and you would get this magazine, and it would tell you everything you knew about baseball and what was happening. Um, so with that magazine, it gave me a glimpse of what was going on in the world. So in business, it gave me an idea in reference to be able to how to market myself, from a platform, from player to business in baseball, and still stay in baseball, but prepare myself for the next level. Was to find out who was doing what, when, and how. And that was kind of like the Bible. It wasn't shown on TV. So you literally had to go and get this magazine to be a part of the baseball world. If you didn't, then you just was guessing. So I really, like, when every day, or not every day, but every week it came out, I had this magazine. I have tons of magazines, and I was up to date on everything that was going on. Now you just can go on TV or see what's going on now. Back then you could not. You had to script what you were going to accomplish, how you were going to accomplish, even from picking a school. I had a full ride at University of Maryland, Eastern Shore. Then I had one at Arizona State University a long time ago, as well as Alabama. Chose University of Maryland, Eastern Shore. Love my school. To this day, I still don't know why I chose that school over the two big schools that I just mentioned. But again, it's about choice. It's about understanding who you are, if you're going to be a big fish in a small pond or small fish in a big pond. And because of my background, always been that fighter, always been that person who um, grind through where I played, as far as on the lower levels, to be able to be shown on the bigger levels. I had to fight my way through, being on some of the best teams in the state of Maryland. Shout out to Johnny's, which is no longer existed, but there was a team in Maryland that was the best team in the state of Maryland. I was the center fielder for that team. That taught me that there was a life after the neighborhood or the high school game, that there were bigger fish out there. Because I was, quite honest, I was killing them. I was just destroying
You were crushing it.
everything. Yeah, I was crushing it. So I had to find a bigger pond to play in. So that's when I found this team. And then from that team, I started to dig in and find out where else I could play for my brand to shine. And my brand was me at the time. So that was how it translated into other different things. And even today, business wise, it's the same model that I have now is the same one that I have then back then.
So I want to dig into that model. And we've got some people that are popping in about this brand saying, love the hat, Andre. And then we've got a couple of, so Monica Brunson's, you and me both, but it's about relationships also. I want real networks, not just cyber ones. I totally agree with you, Monica. So let's talk a little bit about this personal branding aspect, because I think that there's a lot of conversations being had around athletes and developing a personal brand, especially now with NIL and college athletes having the opportunity to get paid. So tell me a little bit about how you went about establishing a personal brand for yourself and getting your name out there. I know you used all these different resources and they may be a little bit different now, but in a business sense, you are still using your personal brand to help with getting opportunities and connections and networks and all of that stuff. So for people that are tuning in, what are some ways that you would recommend that they go about establishing or developing their own personal brand?
Well, shout out to LinkedIn, which is really funny because I really got on LinkedIn. I haven't been on LinkedIn that long, and people have been telling me, "Oh, you got to get on Facebook. You got to get on Instagram." I never was on Facebook or never on Instagram. So LinkedIn, because of business wise, had opened up a lot of relationships that were out there that normally I wouldn't get to. That's just now, but back then, um, for the grinders now, I think it's a lot easier. Honestly, I think it's a lot easier. Everything's at your fingertips now. We're doing a podcast. Anybody can have a podcast now.
The barrier to
You-
entry is so minimal. Like I talk to so many people that are like, I want to start a podcast or a live show. And I'm like, then do it. The barrier to entry there is so minimal.
Right. So those are things that you can do now, to prepare yourself for life after sports. This is easy. A lot of athletes now are doing it now. A lot of shout out to a lot of shows that are out there now. I Am Athlete is one of them. Those shows, guys that have finished playing the game, talking about business. Um, LeBron has a barbershop, just to name a few. But for me, um, you have to you have to believe. First of all, you got to be prepared for the no's. You got to be prepared for the no's. You got to be prepared for the people not believing in you. You have to be prepared for the doors that are shutting. You have to be prepared for that, and it goes back to that light switch all over again. You strike out. You got another couple at bats. And you gotta be kind of forget what happened and transition. And some people just fall from the wayside because they give up too soon, before their blessings really come about. So you got to have that. You got to have perseverance for one. You got to have that. You got to have that special thing that I mentioned that's inside of you. Far as networking, you have to get with people that have your solutions. You can't hang around with people who do not have your solutions. If your goals are to play Major League Baseball, then you need to hang around people who played Major League Baseball or have the same drive that you have. If you hanging around with anybody that is not going in your direction, it's impossible. They're dragging you down.
Yep.
You know. Now, I always said one thing. Your job is who you are. I'm a baseball player, and I've been doing baseball pretty much all my life. I could have done anything in the world. I could have been a pilot. Okay. Never was a pilot, but I'm just saying. I could have been a pilot flying an airplane. It's like, oh man, this is the greatest. Okay. And then 2 years later, I don't want to fly anymore. I want to go back to baseball. Okay. If what you do in your life has taken up probably 80% of who you are, then that's your job. That's what you are. There's a lot of people who've graduated from school who are not doing the same degree. It's because that's not who they are. Now, the pay changes. Trust me, it does. It changes when you find something that's not what you really want to do, but it's paying your bills, that's fine. But here's the crazy part. You do that, build up your nest egg, and find a way to network back into your dream so you can always get back to your dream. You never stuck. It's just mindset of how you position yourself. So for me, even talking with you, sports from suits, I was like, wow, okay, what can I do to get on this show? All right. So let me reach out and let me see what's happening. So here we are. We're talking about it, but it came from me reaching out and having a conversation with you, looking at what you do, um, and being a marvel at what you do and the guests that you've had. And I was like, okay, awesome. There's an opportunity for me to speak about some things that normally I've kept to myself, but I've always shared to my players, but
Yeah.
I've never shared on a larger scale as far as what I do, how I move, etc. So having this opportunity to speak with you is kind of like pulling back the curtains.
I am so grateful for that. So for anybody tuning in, send that email or send that message that you may be holding on to that you haven't done. Like let's take a moment after the show, send a message to somebody because you never know where that's going to lead you in conversation, in partnership, in relationship, and it's such a critical component that you laid out very very clearly, Andre. Okay, so we've got some questions coming in from the guests. So I want to start popping into some questions. Typically, we go through the entire story, but there's so much to unpack here with you. So I want to dive into questions because I want to make sure we get some of these answered. So Trevor is asking, did scouting and playing give you a rounded outlook of performance? To me, scouting professionally takes a tremendous amount of foresight and fortitude. Did this aid in your transition into entrepreneurship? What a great question, Trevor.
Um, I would say, well, yes and no. Scouting allowed me to be able to have a different platform. Okay, let me break that down. All right, as a player, being that I was successful as a player throughout my career, um, I knew what it took to become a pro player. I knew what it took to be a successful baseball player. So I already knew that. Okay, the question is, who's going to listen? Okay, so what I did was I created something, my own baseball camps, my own baseball uh, training stuff, etc. Through college, through my college that I went to, and then different variations of different places all over the country. So that prepared me before I became a scout. Me becoming a scout was introduced on a lot of different levels. One, I was already doing something very exciting, and it was amazing because when I created my company, I went to New York. It was 1985, and I met Delino DeShields, who was playing for the Dodgers at that time. I think, yeah, it was with the Dodgers. I met with Ozzie Smith, Dave Winfield. We were all in New York, and it was at the Negro League function in I think it was 93, I don't know, it was 93, 94, something like that. It was in New York. So I was there with all the big dogs, little old me. Same perspective all over again. I find my way to the big dog. So you want to hang around pro athletes, you want to get to another level, you got to be around them. So I'm there, and quite frankly, I look sharper than all of them there. So they all commented me, and I was like, okay, so I really belong there. So people were talking to me like I was playing. So I'm sitting there talking to Dave Winfield, and I hand him my plan. Now here's a Hall of Famer. I'm bold enough to come up to him and say, hey, this is what I'm doing. Support me. I'm coming regardless, whether you help me or not. I'm coming, but I'm giving you an opportunity to be on the front part of the train to help me succeed. So he took a picture with me, showcased in my business plan, Delino DeShields and I became really close. Um, and then he became a scout for the St. Louis Cardinals, hold 'em believe. And then that gave me a bridge to be a scout for the Cardinals. But I already said I was going to be a scout probably about 4 years prior because I already knew how it was going to go. I just knew the energy was out there and it was going to happen. And I was kind of hungry too because my career ended through an injury. So I had a lot on the plate still. So instead of me crawling in the corner, I can't play anymore. I was like, okay, so my job now is to get to the next level by helping somebody else so I can play through them. So that was my goal. That's how I did that. But the scouting part of it, it helped. It just allowed me to be seen more, be more respected, as I would say. Because when you have the Major League Baseball shield, you're with the Cardinals, you're with the Rockies, you're with the Pirates, ears go up. People want to be around you. Kids flock to you. Yeah, kids flock to you because they figure you got the keys that can drive the car. They figure like, okay, he's a scout for the Cardinals. Let me get close to him. Let me see what he's doing, which is the right approach.
Yep.
And nowadays it's kind of hard to say that now because there are a lot of scouts now. There's a lot of different, and when I have to say, me being an African American scouting baseball, that stood out, quite honestly. And because there wasn't a lot of Black scouts back then. And I was just lucky to be one of them. So I had a lot of questions, a lot of insight, and a lot of different perspectives on the game that most people did not have. But scouting for the Cardinals definitely helped. I get people all the time to reach out to me. I would like to be a scout. I wanna be this or that, and I always tell them. I said, well, you gotta crawl before you walk, but you can also get there. It all depends on what you want to do. Them reaching out to me, reaching out to other scouts. The network nowadays with LinkedIn is so amazing that you can reach out to. I mean, they have shout out to Tyrone Brooks, who's amazing. He's a gentleman that I met too. He's spot on, helping a lot of people get Major League Baseball jobs. So look him up on LinkedIn. He's a very good guy. But with those avenues that are out there, it's a lot easier now. To be a scout is an honor, but the game has changed so much. It's so analytical. It's like they're building robots.
Yeah, I mean, I did a little bit of research in regards to the data aspect of how they're collecting data on these athletes. It's amazing. I mean, it's crazy how it's gone from, like you said, kind of, the game, but also now it's based on data and analytics and all these advanced technologies to evaluate these players. So, there's a lot of business leaders that listen in on this show. And so I would love from your perspective, because you've been around some of the most talented athletes, quite frankly, in the world and ever. So when you're looking or identifying talent, what does that look like for you? What are things that you're looking for? And not necessarily just from a baseball perspective, but just in general. What are you seeking when you're doing like talent development, or when you're looking for good quality people?
Well, the first thing I look for, the talent, that sometimes jumps off the page. Excuse me. That jumps off the page sometimes. So that's kind of like easy to be able to see. It's like looking at a great painting, but it's really based on who's looking at it. So that's why analytics are so important right now, because how I view talent is different how they do it now. For me, I'm still old school. I use my eyes. I have the eye test. There are certain things that I use for analytics to help me, to really, really see what I saw that makes sense, if that makes sense. Sometimes back then it was like, I remember it was a movie. I forgot what movie it was. I think, shoot, it was one of the game. It was a movie, and it was like a scout said, well, If he has an ugly girlfriend, he lacks confidence. I said, okay, that makes sense. You know. So hey, that ain't an analytics, but maybe it is. I don't know what page it's on, but it's there. So I just felt like that part of it is really based upon, for me, I think, like your personality, how well you handle criticism, how well you can persevere through a bad game. I've had kids that struck out, and here's the crazy part: being as a scout, there are good strikeouts, and then there are bad strikeouts. And just because you struck out, you felt though you did not accomplish anything. But me as a scout, I'm looking at, I'm like, okay, all right, that was everything looked good. You just didn't work out that time. The game, you have to understand, the game is built for you to fail. So it's not something that's going to be 100%. No one's going to bat 1,000. There's no up crazy numbers that will apply to that. It's kind of like a elongated season to be able to figure out whatever you got right, whatever you got wrong. So for me, seeing a kid, um, and here's the thing: you can go see a kid, and he might not play really good that day, and then unfortunately, this for kids to understand. Yeah, you're gonna have bad days and good days, but you better have more good days than bad, because if that one bad day is the only day, and sometimes you only get one chance. When you get one chance to bomb, like if I bomb right now, I'm bombed. I'm not good no more.
We're live. It's okay.
But hey, I'm going to bounce back because I got that button. But anyway, I just really believe that if you dive into and looking at a kid, and he has the personality, and he has the willingness to really want to do well, and really not down on himself. Excuses doesn't work. If you have an excuse, it better be valid. Or if you're in a position to understand and critique yourself, you have to be that man in the mirror to say, you know what, I didn't play well today, and this is the reason why. And you kind of like will figure it out if you really dig deep inside. Well, did I get some rest? Did I stay up too late? Did I prepare? What is it that I could have done? And nowadays it's so easy to do different things now to be great. Um, Nowadays kids can, they can go to the gym, and they have all these workouts, all these different things that just weren't available to us now to become this great athlete. So the pressure is on. Here's the thing: the secret is out. You know what I mean? So all these athletes that are competing for these Major League Baseball gigs and a business, the secret is out how to get there. So that means back when I played, it was a moment where everybody didn't know how to get to a certain point. Now with the internet and everything else that's out there, everybody has access to this. So now it's like the line is a lot longer. Back then, the
Like when you're
line was, yeah,
I was just gonna say, if you're listening in and you're an entrepreneur, this applies completely to business. 110% what you're saying is the
absolutely.
same thing. You're gonna have good days, you're gonna have bad days. Hopefully more good than bad, right? But your willingness and ability to get up and recover is so absolutely critical. So I just wanted to point that out because it's a direct translation into going from sports into business and some of the skill sets that you can use and translatable pieces there that can help you see success in whatever you're trying to accomplish. So I wanted to give that shout out there because these are not just baseball lessons, everybody. This is completely relevant to anything that you may be doing in your career or life.
Absolutely. Because even though I'm using baseball references, a lot of times, like you just mentioned, I'm really speaking about everything that has transitioned in my life beyond baseball.
Yep.
Baseball is just, that's why it's true for most corporate America to love athletes as business partners. They understand teamwork, they understand winning, losing, getting up after a bad performance, etc. Those things you learn in sports. Most businesses love athletes, and in the world of sports right now, it all is conducive to being the better business person, period. Because again, the term baseball is life, or football is life, whatever you play, soccer is life, badminton is life, whatever. Uh, Whatever sport you play applies for life and everything, because you're going to fail, you're going to succeed. And then the question is, what do you do once you either fail or succeed? Because even when you succeed, there's some people rest like it's over, like the game's over, and it's not over, because there will be a season where you have to go to another level. And just because you're at this particular level, it's like in baseball. You were in high school, now you're in college. You were great in high school. You can't take high school to college. You can, but it better be transferable to where that you can apply those things. And now you have the college version of yourself, and then you have the pro version of yourself. And then when you leave sports, then you have the business version of yourself outside of sports. Some people who are great in sports are terrible in business. Why? Because they didn't prepare themselves. They didn't prepare themselves. They thought it ended when the game ended, and it doesn't. It doesn't end that way. There's a lot of, like, if you can't play baseball anymore, then why can't you be an agent? Why can't you be why can't you be an entrepreneur? Why can't you be a person? Why can't you be a coach? Why can't you transition to something to prolong the game? And if you didn't make Major League Baseball, why couldn't you be a hitting instructor for the St. Louis Cardinals? Why, you'll still get a World Series ring. And you can say, hey, I made it. I made it as a business, on the business side of Major League Baseball, not as a player. I was a player and I didn't make it on that side, but I made it, and that's what you have to look at.
The goal doesn't have to change. The path to get there may have to change.
Absolutely.
That's a critical component that I learn almost every day as far as entrepreneurship is concerned. You have goals and you have those things that you want to achieve, but the path may be completely different to get to that goal than what you envisioned. And that's okay. You've got to be patient, be able to pick yourself back up, and you've got to be able to move forward and continue the grind, right? But you don't have to lose sight of that goal just because an obstacle popped in your way.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. 100%. All right,
let's dive into some questions here, because we've got a few more questions that are super interesting. So Jason said, who has been influential in your growth professionally?
Inspiration. That's a question. That's kind of like, that's a lot. One, I learned my work ethic from my mom. That's the first part of it. Then I had mentors along the way that were in the same craft, and then I had legends that I did not know who were like inspirational to me as an athlete. And one was Muhammad Ali. He had the same personality I had, so he kind of drew to me. And then and Deion Sanders, prime time. That's one of my, I used to always joke and say I was prime time before prime time was prime time. But I don't think he appreciate that one. But but I felt like I was, because I couldn't, they wouldn't allow me to be great, they wouldn't allow me to play. They wouldn't allow me to go from baseball to track and then play football and then basketball all in the same week. Yeah, I could have done it, but they wouldn't allow me to. So anyway, but I just think that the opportunities that are out there is just amazing. I just think that if I had one other mentor professionally in baseball that helped me too, and that would be Delino DeShields that I mentioned before, because he was the catalyst to help me, because he was relevant. When he was playing, he was relevant. I would go see him play, and I would bring my future stars that I was training to the game. And then I was a scout. I was in the front row. I would pull back the curtain for these kids. I would take them behind the scenes. They would meet the Lionel the Shields. They would meet whoever was with the Cardinals at that particular time. And then when Delano went to the Baltimore Orioles, he was in my hometown. So I got a chance to really be able to dive in behind the scenes. But when I was behind the scenes, I always allowed certain players that I was training and building up to be better players, understanding if I got a chance for them to see what it looks like behind the scenes. Okay, he's a professional player. Okay, the game is over. This is what it looks like when the game's being played, and this is what it looks like after. Do you want some of this? And if you want some of this, you got to find you got to work harder, you know. So I didn't get that as a kid. I didn't get it. I had to go get a magazine from 7-Eleven and look at the words and make it happen. You know, so me pulling back the curtain for these kids to be able to see that. So one of my inspirations was Delano the Shields, and he helped me in that regard. And Ken Griffey Sr. is another one. Um, he was when I met him in Atlanta, and I was part of the Ken Griffey Instructo Swing, and it was a hitting device that he had back in the day. And this is when Ken Griffey Jr. was at the height of his baseball career. He was still with Seattle, and when I met his father in Atlanta, um, that was a great opportunity. And I haven't talked to him in a long time, but he was inspirational because he allowed me to be able to see what was possible. And of course, Dave Winfield giving me an opportunity to be able. And it wasn't like we had these long conversations, Dave Winfield or I or any of these guys. Sometimes there's a moment, and even though you might have the way to reach out to them, that moment that I had with them was enough that I didn't have to call them because it was motivation for me enough. So I hope that answered that question.
So we've got Monica popping in, and I was just about to say this. She said, "That's great. You open the door for so many young players." So for those of you that are listening, be a door opener. You never know what seed that plants in the life of other people. Just be a door opener. Give them opportunity. Expose them to opportunity. If you see talent in people, be a door opener. Okay, so we've got Jody popping in here, and she said, "Well," and I think it's Jody is a she. So tell us what you're doing now, your different companies. So share with the audience a little bit about what you have going on now.
Well, currently, I have a company called ProStar, and I develop players that I've been doing. I've been doing that for years. The names have changed over the years. It used to be Next Level Baseball Association, and now it's ProStar, and which is pretty much the same company, but I've been doing that for forever. It's the names change, but the person's still the same. It's the same person. Those who know me, who have followed me, knew that those things have changed. Living in Arizona now, so it's a whole different mood now. So, and I have a new exciting company that I'm a part of, and that's Jody Cottrell and Keith Hill. And we have a sports agency that we've developed, and it's brand new, and we've only been at it for about a year and a half working on it. But it's been working on it for about a year and a half. However, with our experiences all together, we basically combine everything that we do. Jody Cottrell, who's probably asking the question, she
Yes.
she's the agent of our group, and Keith Hill has the sports background in reference to player enhancements as far as developing from injury, recovering from injury, and things of that nature. And then also to him also scouting and developing stuff. But Jody has been the main person behind the business side of it. I'm the other half of it. I'm a part of the GM player development, and everything else that comes along with that / agent. because I know the nuances about the game, and what scouts look for, what teams look for, etc. So we developed a powerful new company, um, Elite Sports Performance Group, what it's called, and it's up and coming. We have several players now that we represent, and they're in Dallas. We have office in Dallas. We have one in Houston, and I'm here in Arizona. So we're working on a lot of exciting things. We have a lot of athletes now that we're pushing to help get drafted. One for sure we have is Danny. His name is Danny Harris the fourth. He was at University of Kentucky, and we are pushing him. Hopefully, he has an opportunity with Arizona Diamondbacks in February. So hopefully that turns out well. That's another story. That's another day. But this is an opportunity. This goes back to pulling back the curtains to helping kids reach their dreams and aspirations, because it's really hard to do. So with Jody and Keith and myself, we've been pushing that. We've been pushing that and helping these kids in ways untraditional. The business is the business, and sometimes the hard part of business is having a personal relationship with the players. I've had that a lot of times when I was a scout with the Cardinals, and I would not have a kid drafted under me. I would have another scout that I was close to draft from another team that would help them get drafted. I would support it, but I wanted to have someone else use their eyes to see what maybe personally, wasn't there, whether it was something that was missing, but I was like, I'm gonna push this one through. But when you push something through and it doesn't work out well, a lot of times it comes back on you.
Yep.
And they were like, he's outdated, he's washed up, he doesn't see well, he doesn't know what he's doing. And you have to be very careful about who you endorse in that world, because it's really tight. You can't have a lot of bombs. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of scouts, are scared. I think they think analytics help them, because I mean, you can have a kid who does this and the numbers look great, and then when they get to the field, I mean, you see what you see, but something is missing. And it's a lot of times there's a lot of things that's missing. I mean, baseball players and a lot of sports and a lot of different players, athletes were all shapes and different sizes. They were, you have some chubby people that were very successful. You would have some skinny people that were very successful, some tall, some short. Even in the game, like where like in basketball, there was a guy that I played with in high school, Muggsy Bogues
Yeah,
from
Muggsy Bogues. I was just thinking Muggsy Bogues. I mean,
Muggsy. Yeah,
what, 5'7"?
I went to Dunbar.
Okay, so he
And
was like
yeah,
what, 5'7" or 5'8"? Like he was
I
not.
don't know how tall he was. I don't think it was no 5'7". I think he was. I
Okay.
have no idea, but he was, for some reason, I don't know. He was just, I don't know. He was just short. But anyway, he changed the game in that aspect. Basketball players are supposed to be tall. No, they weren't. I mean, and then tall sometimes became a now I think tall is bad.
Yep.
I
So
mean,
Muggsy
unless you
Bogues,
are, yeah, like,
Muggsy Bogues, and I'm taking this off of Wikipedia, so I'm hoping that this is accurate.
okay.
It's 5'3", right?
There
So
you go. I say he wasn't 5'7". I knew he wasn't 5'7".
you look at these professional players now, and they're 7 feet. I mean, they're
Yeah.
super tall, but he was such an incredible basketball player, and he
Yes.
was, but
He was before his time.
and
Because
I
right
would
now, I don't
imagine that,
think
like, didn't
right
he?
now.
Like, I would imagine he could have, like, in today's time, like, he would have just gotten passed by because of his height.
Absolutely. And that's what that changes. That's why I said sometimes people were born in wrong times as an athlete, and sometimes they were in good positions, depending upon when they came up. Like right now, I don't think he would, I don't think it would work. I just didn't. All his shots will be blocked. I mean,
He
he
was an
wasn't.
incredible basketball player. I remember watching Muggsy play. He was amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, he was. But just and like Manute Bol, he wouldn't work because he can't shoot. Everybody can shoot. So I mean, and like in baseball, it's different too because everybody's a robot. Everybody looks the same. I mean, everybody's built the same. Baseball players look like football players. Everybody is different. The game, we used to be tall and skinny and still hit the ball out the park, and we didn't have to do all the things that they do now. And now the game, you don't even recognize football players from baseball players half the time now. I mean, it's just amazing.
So, with all of your background and experience, name like 2 or 3 athletes that you've seen like play in person that you're just like, these people were freaking amazing. Like they were absolutely like that you saw them play and you were like, oh my gosh. Like for me, like watching like a Dominique Moceanu or somebody like that in gymnastics, like she was incredible. There's a million athletes, but there's only to me a couple that I'm like, wow, these people.
That's hard for me. And then you talking about in baseball
Yeah, give me 2 or 3 in baseball that you've seen and you're like, oh my gosh, this is insane.
man, that's not fair. Oh man, it's not. That's the
I'm putting you
hardest
on the
question.
spot here, but
Yeah, that's a hard question, and that's not. Well, I'll say, all right. I'll tell you who was on my wall when I was in college.
okay, there you go.
That tells you all you need to know. And I'm just going by who was on my wall. Now who I love now. Um, Ricky Henderson was one. He was on my wall. Reggie Jackson was my idol. He was on my wall. And the other one, which is kind of crazy, which was a lot of people don't know him, but Daryl Strawberry was on my wall.
Okay.
Those are the three that was on my wall. And I looked up, even when I was in high school, I would look up, and those were my inspirations. Now, here's the crazy part. I'm gonna tell you who I admire later and I loved as a player. And I love Pete Rose and I love and Tony Gwynn. Yeah, those guys. That's my era.
What about them just stood out to you?
Well, Tony Gwynn was a technician. He could hit baseballs like he was playing pool. He could hit anywhere he wanted to. Reggie Jackson had that button where he would strike out and they would boo him, but he would get up the next at bat, probably hit a home run, and they would cheer. But that's a button that he could push. So he had that type of swag. Ricky Henderson stole bases, but he had a flair in the outfield when he catches balls that were hitting the gap. He would run them down like it was nothing, and then he would snatch the ball out of the air. And then when he had bat, he had the coolest. I mean, if he could wear this hat and be playing instead of the helmet, he would. That's how smooth he was. So he came out and that he jumped out at me for that perspective of it. And his game was he allowed me, every player that I mentioned, I had different parts of their game in my game. Reggie Jackson, I had, for my size, I had that power because I batted fourth in college. You can tell I was a little bit muscular then. Now I batted fourth in college. I was a big dog back then. And then speed wise, I had the speed. I had the power of Reggie Jackson, the speed of Ricky Henderson on the bases, and Daryl Strawberry. I just loved him because he was the straw to stir the drink, and that's how I felt like I was at that time.
I love that. Okay, so we are coming up on time, and I want to make sure that we answer one more question because we had Marcus pop in here. And this question was, what can we do to get HBCU baseball more exposure to the MLB?
Great question. And that's one of the things we need to have a conversation with later because this is our first podcast, but that's one of the things that's dear and near to my heart. I think, and let me just say this, and I'll probably can close on this one because this one was really, really, this is really heartfelt for me. HBCUs in baseball are being forgotten. Okay, let me say that again. All right. Now, you look at, okay, let's use Deion Sanders. Oh, I forgot to talk about Deion. But Deion Sanders, for example, right? He's at Jackson State, right? He left. He was Deion Sanders. So he went to HBCU. His mission was to have the NFL look at HBCU football players. He's Deion Sanders. So everybody's like, okay, he could have went to any college, probably could have head coach job anywhere, but he wanted to highlight what was going on in the HBCUs for football. Okay. So with that being said, everybody's paying attention. He has a platform. He was an analyst on TV. He's primetime. He's a Hall of Famer. He's one of my I love him dearly. He's one of my idols. And he was so passionate about it. And then there was an uproar where he got the #1 draft pick in high school to go to the college, and all the big schools, Alabama, etc., was all in the uproar and wondering how he stole him. Well, he just stole one, but Dion was in a position where he wanted to make sure that NFL take notice, because back in the day there were a couple guys that were, matter of fact, Art Shell went to University of Maryland Eastern Shore, used to be called Maryland State. Art Shell used to play for the Raiders. He was an offensive lineman, but he was at a HBCU. He's the only Hall of Famer that I know of. I could be wrong, but he's the only Hall of Famer that I know of, because I didn't know that much about it. Um, but transitioning to baseball, for all the travesty that you would see in football, it's 100% worse in baseball. It's not even close. So what Mr. Marcus Smith had mentioned is daunting. The task is daunting to overcome. There are people out here trying to fight for a different playing field. However, it's hard because you got to have key people in key positions to be able to do that. And that's where I come in at as best I can. So if I ever get a corporate gig in Major League Baseball again, or something in that fashion, I'll be looking there. Me as a scout, I'll be looking at more HBCUs than anything, because I'll be trying to pull kids out that don't get seen. So to answer this question, I think it's a little bit easier. The kids that are in HBCUs, they have to really be professional in the sense of, no matter where you're playing. Like, I played at HBCU. Okay. I had an opportunity to go to other different schools, but I played at HBCU. It didn't change the way I played. But if I was able to do it over again, I'll be a little bit more aware of where I am, because I didn't know no difference. Even though I passed up Arizona State and Alabama, when I was playing at UMES, I felt like I was playing at Alabama, because I got caught up in the hype playing and just loving the game and not realizing that I'm at a HBCU. So I might not get looked at as much as if I was at another school. It totally slipped my mind. It didn't even come apparent until I got to my junior year. And I'm like, wait a minute, hold up. So this is a lesson. So the kids that are playing at HBCUs, you have to make sure that you, like I did in high school, even though you're playing at HBCU, make sure your summer is about something other than HBCU, from a perspective of being exposed to other areas. If you're on the East Coast, have a player summer in the West Coast. Get some different looks on you. Get some different views on you. The internet allows you to do a lot of different things that we couldn't do. So realistically, you're gonna have to pack your bags and do a lot of different stuff. Or um, the athletic directors need to really hire, or really get up their recruiting a little bit more intense. Like, get somebody professionally on an HBCU, like like a Deion Sanders, to be able to grab and get kids and steal a couple players like they did in football. That's one of the other ways to be able to do it.
So we could keep this conversation going for hours. Like, I am totally convinced. And I can't thank you enough, Andre, for joining in. And for everybody that's tuning in and listening, thank you for continuously joining in and supporting the show. So, Andre, if there are people out there that are listening that want to stay in contact with you or follow your journey, what's the best way to do so? And don't give out phone number. But is there, like,
Absolutely.
go to the website, or is there, what's the
They
best way to engage with you?
they can reach out either via LinkedIn, reach out that way. That'll probably be a little easier to be able to do. Also, they could. Well, our website is which we have to get up soon. So I don't have that website link yet as it because we're still building it. But you could actually reach out to me via LinkedIn. That's probably the easiest way to do that. Or yeah, LinkedIn probably be the
Well, and
best way.
once again, thank you so much for joining in. I mean, there are so many lessons learned in this conversation. Once again, we could probably keep it going on for ever and ever and ever, but I would love to have you back on the show at some point to keep diving into your story. And to everybody listening, thanks again for joining in. Once again, this is a highlight of my week. I host these every Tuesday from 1 to 2 Central Time. So definitely drop a comment. Let me know what you learned. And feel free to reach out if I can be a resource in any way possible. So, Andre, thanks again.
Pleasure, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. All right, guys. Until next week.